The Week in Review with David Davis.
Is there not a risk that the Exchequer will lose more in growth than it will gain in the windfall tax?
This is David Davis. This is our second Week in Review. This week, the biggest issue is the cost of living and, of course, the windfall tax and what the Treasury is doing about it. There are other things you'll hear about this week which have caught my attention, but next week Parliament is in recess, so next week's going to be all about the things that interest me and not about Parliament. Today we had a statement from the Chancellor on dealing with the cost of living. It amounted to a very big package, 15 billion, cumulatively I think 35 billion. And it was aimed not just at the poorest, but also across the board. So it will mitigate, won't meet all the costs, but it'll mitigate the costs for many people. It's a good idea. I would frankly have preferred to have improved the universal credit and given back all the taxes we've taken. But as it stands, it's a welcome change. However, he was also concerned about inflation. And inflation is a complex subject and all sorts of things affect it, shortages, currency, and of course, the money supply. Two of my colleagues had very strong views on this, John Redwood and Desmond Swayne.
When the Chancellor approved 150 billion of extra cash to be printed in November 2020 and gave a full guarantee against losses on the bonds, did he then think there could be any inflationary and public spending risk from this? I fully support giving back the huge windfall tax he is already collecting on energy, the VAT on fuel, the rip-off at the pumps and the much enhanced profits tax coming from North Sea oil and gas. That should be given back because people need some relief. But on inflation, what did he think when he printed the money?
Sir Desmond Swayne.
What difference in monetary policy has protected Japan and Switzerland from the levels of inflation that we're encountering here in the US and the rest of Europe?
They make a very good point. A, that the government does have some control over what the Bank of England does. That was John Redwood's point. And that when we pour money into the economy, it does make the inflation problem worse, which is why places as different as Switzerland and Japan, both of which depend on vast numbers of imports, are having a better outcome than us. As well as that, I also raised a concern over the windfall tax. This is a Labour idea, which we appear to have taken on board. We perhaps call it the windfall levy or the energy levy. What that does is take some money out of the energy companies to pump back into the economy. But unfortunately, I think that by increasing the taxes, we might well cut foreign investment and lead to a cut in growth rate, which will then mean the Treasury will lose out, and indeed all of us will. So there's some good things in this proposal, but there are still some really serious flaws in the government's economic policy. This week, the RMT voted for summer industrial action across the train network. Now, this is bound to cause massive disruption. Indeed, it looks as though it's intended to cause massive disruption and a period of economic strife. Now, people don't know it was a Conservative government that originally made it possible for people legally to go on strike. Our support of union and workers' rights goes right back to Benjamin Disraeli. And I'm a supporter of trade union rights and workplace rights. When the government introduced its trade union bill in 2015, I criticised the proposed requirement for picket organisers to have to provide their names to the police. I thought it was wholly unnecessary. However, in monopoly situations and when the public interest is clear, I think the government should have an ability to intervene. Now, it must be via some due process and can't just be at the whim of a minister. But in order to keep the economy moving and protect vital services, there must be space for government action. I therefore support legislative change to control the damage that industrial action causes to ordinary people. And when that comes up, I'll support it, but I'll also make sure that it's done through proper due process. Now, this channel doesn't do advertising, but this week we're going to break that rule because I've been reading this book, Zero by Jeremy Hunt, the erstwhile Foreign Secretary, but before that he was Health Secretary. It's an incredibly honest book. He talks about his own time. He admits to have made a lot of mistakes, but he also tries to learn from his time. Zero is about the aim of reducing unnecessary death rates in healthcare to zero. Because lots of mistakes are made inevitably. 20 years ago, I wrote about this, estimated that we probably killed something like 20,000 people from errors, wrong injections, wrong operations, all that sort of thing, and that we could probably cut it in half. The year after, Liam Donaldson, the chief medical officer, actually said the numbers were bigger than I thought, both in terms of deaths and also in terms of injury. Injury is nearly 1 million people a year. So what Jeremy's talking about in this is reforming the health service to make it better and to reduce those things to zero. I think this is just the first step in a lot of reforms we have to undertake. We've learned a lot in the last couple of years about the weaknesses of the health service, and I think we're going to have to put a lot of them right in the coming years. But this is the first step. So if you've got the time, do have a read of Zero by Jeremy Hunt. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you for tuning in. We're still looking for feedback, so if you liked it, click like or subscribe. Give us some comments below. One of the comments we had from last week was somebody saying, well, would you answer some questions for us? And so if you're interested in this and you want to put questions, we'll pick out a few to answer next week. Thank you for tuning in. See you next week.